All right, so we're going to talk about relationships from the standpoint of disappointment, pain, sorrow, and grief, and emotional release. You know what? This is a good time. With the fiery energy of Aries and the full moon here, it's good to release, do some emotional releasing. And we're talking about relationships. We're talking about intimacy, and the cards have said that we're going to talk about it from the point of view of disappointment, pain, sorrow, and grief. Can we do that? Relationships, pain, sorrow, and grief. We all have been through some relational pain. Even in the last few days, I've been through some relational pain. And a lot of relational pain stems from communication issues, right? Communication issues. Hey, Kayvon, thank you. Communication issues. I want to talk about communication because there's a lot of grief that comes from communication. In the last few days, I experienced some communication issues. And I'm a really good communicator, but even still, that doesn't make me immune from communication things inside relationships. It's how it is, right? And we got to be brave about this when we're communicating, because sometimes we want to fold in and avoid communication. Sometimes we don't want to say exactly what we need to say, right? Because we don't want the other person to flare up. We don't want them to get angry. We don't want them to feel a certain way, or they don't want us to feel a certain way. So they're not coming straight forward with things, right? And so when we are going through a tough time, it's important. I'm about to give you some strategy. It's the stuff that I teach in coaching. If you need help with this, remember I offer one-on-one coaching. You get they angry, so you keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Yep. It's a protective mechanism. That makes sense. I'm sure they don't like it. There have been times in my past where I have shut down because the situation was going to escalate, and I saw that, so I decided to shut down, and they would follow behind me. No, say what you got to say. Say it right now. No, wait, and that's the worst thing to do. Because when a person is trying to create some space so they can think, so they can handle you properly, and you still coming at them like that, that's not a good thing. So if that's you, let's talk about some strategy, okay? Yeah, don't poke the bear, because it takes a lot for me to argue. If I were you, I would make myself comfortable. I would get a pen and a paper, because I'm about to give you some good information. And if you struggle with communication for yourself or within your relationship, I'm about to give you something good. The first thing that you should know about yourself is the difference between your higher self listening and your ego listening. Your ego. Let's talk about your ego. Your ego is the part of you that is conditioned. Your ego is programmed with rules, okay? And the rules dictate what you get upset about, when you get upset, and how upset you get. I had to really look at that and ask, is this serving me? Is this bringing me greater peace in my life? Is it true? All right? Is it helping me develop intimacy around me, or is it making me more rigid? Is this rule serving who I'm becoming? Because who I'm becoming, who are you becoming? Who are you becoming? Because who I was becoming was a more mature communicator. It stressed you out. I was becoming a more mature communicator. I was becoming an easygoing person. I was becoming a more conscious person, a more spiritual person, a person who was more well-versed in energy work and alchemy. And because I was doing that, I had to deactivate the programs, the rules that were governing my autopilot, okay? So my ego, my autopilot is in my ego. The ego is very much concerned about how people see you. The ego is concerned about how people think about you. The ego is concerned about controlling others, controlling situations, and being safe. All right. Hey, P-Tone, what's up? And so your ego, when your ego is hearing what someone else is saying, it is contracting. Programs are getting activated all over the place. Your autopilot is in a whole storm of programs activated. That's listening from your ego. All right, you're triggered. Absolutely, you are triggered, and from your trigger you get in a stress response. So now you can't think right because all you're doing is feeling this intense emotion. You can't hardly listen to them because it's so intense inside. You can't take in any more information. If any more programs get activated, I don't know, you might go off. So you have to shut down. Right? And everybody has an ego, and we need the ego. But right now, I'm talking about the way the ego doesn't serve us. The ego does serve us. But in this situation, where communication is concerned, when we're talking about intimacy, this is a dysfunctional ego, okay? And so when you're listening from your ego, you are not going to be able to resolve anything. When you are in a stress response, your thinking faculty is halted. You go into a flight or fight response. Your body tenses up. You're ready to leave or lash out. One of the two. You start fidgeting. You might start walking around. You might start, you know that you can't take it. Your heart is racing. You are sweating. It's anxiety. Okay? When you listen from your ego, it's important when you're trying to communicate with someone through a difficult situation. You got to identify where you're listening from. If you're listening from your ego, you're not going to be able to hear them because you're stressed out, because you're in anxiety, because your pain body is active, and it is not going to allow you to take in information and process it. When you are listening from your higher self, it's a different experience, and you got to practice this. This comes with practice. I offer one-on-one coaching because if you got some specific programs that are resistant, we can deprogram them together. I can walk you through it. All right. You sign up for one session or you can sign up for 4 at a time. It's totally up to you. Always worth it. Okay. So now your higher self is your spirit. Okay. Your higher self is not programmed. Your ego is a function of the programming in your brain. It's a function of being human. All right. As a human, we need an ego. As a human, our spirit is what is being expressed through our experiences. Okay. So our spirit is the indestructible part of us. Our spirit was there before we ever were born. Our spirit is infinite. Our spirit is dwelling in love. Our spirit knows exactly what to do. Our spirit is infinite wisdom, infinite creativity. Our spirit is not concerned with how other people see us because it has no awareness of that. Concerns about how other people see us is a function of the ego, and it can serve us right now. Self is patient, is kind, is understanding, is wise. When your ego is functioning, your ego helps you choose what's serving you and what is not, gets information from your higher self and carries it out. When your ego is not serving you, your ego is running the show. Okay? So, before you have a difficult conversation, the first thing you need to do when you are about to have a conversation that could have some edge to it, all right, is to remind yourself of what I just said. I can listen from my ego or I can listen from my higher self. That's the first thing. Okay, this is going to come with practice. I suggest that you don't wait till the conversation comes to practice this. Do it every day with the little things. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Higher self, ego, choose which one. Because your higher self doesn't give a damn. It's there for a reason, and there's a process, and there's a reason you're in it. Your higher self is eternally wise. Thank y'all so much. So while you're in traffic, or somebody's cutting you off, or somebody rolled their eyes at you, or somebody snapped, the small things, choose where you're going to listen from. Your ego getting upset like you always do, or your higher self where you go, okay, whatever they have to say doesn't have to be a reflection of me. It's reflecting where they are and how they are at this time, and they need to be where they are and how they are at this time. People can have opinions about me, and I don't have to like it. It doesn't shake my identity. It doesn't make me less than. That's higher self thinking. You got to talk to yourself from your higher self. Somebody not seeing you the way that you want to be seen does not have to affect you. Okay? Now, you might need some work in that area. That's why I'm saying practice. Okay, I can remember a time that because I have really broad shoulders, and when I got muscular, people would say, oh, she's a man. That's a man. And I would get so upset because they saw me like a man. I'm not a man. Get so mad, right? Until I realized they can think that if they want. But what do I think about myself? Right? And there was some key identity issues going on in me about being non-binary, right? About being gender non-conforming that I hadn't quite worked through yet. And so when they would bring it out, I would feel the intensity of not working through it yet and not understanding it and being frustrated within myself, right? So I would think it was because they said that, but it was really because it stirred up my programs, okay? All right? So yeah, they thought my hair was too masculine, my muscles are too masculine, what I'm wearing is too masculine, how I'm acting is too masculine. I'm exactly like I need to be. Okay, but when I'm listening from my ego cares about that. And so my ego wants to fuss and make a point, right? But my higher self does not care. Thank you, I am. So practice, that's your work between now and the next time you see me. Practice listening from your ego versus your higher self and watch the difference. Now, like I said, you might not be able to do this with big things because your programs are strong. Do this with little things, right? You call your child out the room and they say, what? Don't go off. Think about this, okay? They said what? Probably because they don't feel like coming. They said what? Probably because they were doing something and I wasn't mindful that they could have been doing something, right? This is how you begin to deprogram your rules. When you listen from your ego, you're going to get triggered. You're going to get upset. It's going to intensify. And you're either going to have to lash out or shut down. You have no control over it because your autopilot is in control. But when you start practicing the difference between your egoic listening and your higher self listening, that's when the game changes for you. Now, that's not all, but that's a good place to start. And the reason I talked about communication is because that's a major intimacy block. Listen, intimacy is a state of being between you and another, okay? It's the space that you dwell in together. But you're not going to be able to dwell in that space if you have communication problems. You're going to remain in your head. They're going to remain in their head. Everybody is going to be thinking about what's in their head. Nobody is going to be in the shared space. You're having different experiences, seeing things differently, and no way to rectify it. Step one is to practice higher self listening. Because sometimes you need to listen to some hard stuff. Sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow what people have to say, but it's their experience and we cannot invalidate it. Don't say, that's not true. That's not true. That's just how you see it. That's your ego getting really upset about it. Your higher self is able to go, okay, that's your experience. You are experiencing that right now. Can you tell me more about it? Can we look more deeply into it? That shifts your consciousness from inside of your head to outside in the intimate space that you are sharing. Okay? That's it. I would be here for another hour just giving you step one. But the step before step one is what I just gave you, and that's enough. I promise you that's enough, because it's going to make you aware of how out of control you really are and how in control your autopilot is. That's really important. Don't skip over that step, because you can't move on without this. That's why I stopped there.